So we were just talking about creating self-images and about our conditioning and so forth, and you were sharing an insight that you had about, once you see that,
Mm-hmm.
that gives you some choices. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I would say first, the reason we brought up the topic of self-image was the commonality for everybody, regardless of their position and their beliefs, is that they have formed a self-image of themselves. That's how we're trained as children to develop an identity. The issue is that identity that we form, we think then that that's what we are, and we become very defensive of it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want it to be attacked. We don't want it to be questioned. And that identity includes our beliefs and the other attitudes
Mm-hmm.
we've accumulated.
It could be like religious beliefs, but it could also
religious
just
or
be,
political or whatever.
yeah.
And we think that's what we are, and we need to defend it and keep it safe. And then associated with that, as we've talked about, is fear that self-image may be hurt or destroyed
Mm-hmm.
in some way.
And it can even be a positive self-image, I would
Positive.
say. Yeah,
We
right.
think of ourselves as a very spiritual beings,
Uh-huh.
as very enlightened. It doesn't matter what the form is. The thing to see, the insight, is that we have formed a self-image which is not what we are.
Yeah, or it could just be a belief about what we are. We could even say, I am a child of God. I am my higher self, and that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, and be kind of proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as we've seen, that can become a prison or a limitation
Yeah,
in
so-
certain ways, and maybe we should elucidate a little bit or look at
Yes.
how that becomes a prison.
Yeah, so that is an essential insight beyond discussing different views and different attitudes and trying to convince people of different ways of seeing things, is to understand that we're all acting from a self-image. Well, once you have that insight and you see it, and by insight, what I mean is not an intellectual concept, but an actual seeing of it. Seeing in your consciousness, watch yourself form the image and watch your feelings come up, defending yourself when somebody says something, watching the constant chatter as people talk to justify your image and correct them in your mind. So once you have that insight about the self-image, that's the central issue
For yourself and for others.
for yourself and others,
Mm-hmm.
then what follows from that? Well, a very common reaction to that is for that process that forms the self-image and defends it. That process takes on the role then of saying, okay, I am now going to correct that and make myself more spiritual, make myself a better person, which is a continuation of the self-image process. And that often leads to people that we call having spiritual egos because they think they're superior. The other preferred alternative is, once you have that insight about the self-image forming in yourself, is to relax from doing it. Seeing how the self-image is formed and how it limits you and how it causes conflict, because now other people have different self-images. It doesn't mean it ends. You can be seeing someone or in a discussion and still these same responses come up.
Mm-hmm.
But what's different is you no longer pay any attention to the responses. If you can put it in terms of that, what you are is a field of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when these reactions come up, you turn your awareness, so to speak, and give attention to the, I'm hurt, or I think this is the right way to do it. In other words, you
hold on to
engage.
that.
You engage in the feeling and you engage in the thought. As opposed to what I'm saying, relaxing from it, is those feelings and those thoughts come up, but you don't pay any attention to
You
it.
don't give it special importance.
You don't give it any special importance, and you just simply ignore it.
Yeah.
Now, when that happens, you enter a state where you're not defending a self-image, and you're not in the process of maintaining it, and your mind becomes more empty and more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's quite peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
But very often the fear that comes up in people is that they now become meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
They now become empty. And
Nobody. They
they're
become
not
nobody.
yeah, and they're
Purpose.
not solving
Lacking in purpose. Perhaps.
lacking in purpose, not solving world problems, not contributing. And what I'm suggesting is that state of withdrawing from the self-image process and relaxing is a state of opening yourself to wholeness or God acting through you. that's our purpose, that what we actually are is not the self-image. What we actually are is life living us, God living us. It could well be that the person continues on as an artist or writes a book or something, but the difference will be the, how can I put it, the process or the state of mind, the usual process of the self-image, deciding what to do, evaluating themselves, comparing themselves to others, all of that is dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is an impulse, say, to do art, the impulse comes through in a clean, pure way without a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, I've noticed, like, for example, with the example of doing art, and these are some of my paintings here, that,
Mhm.
I had the idea when I started doing a lot of it to do it in service of higher truths and beauty and so forth, and it's a great goal.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets corrupted along the way
Mm-hmm.
by thinking, oh, I'm good at this, or remembering
Mhm.
certain things I've been taught. Oh, yes, I remember these things well, and teaching them, and or maybe feeling hurt that I wasn't acknowledged or
Right.
whatever in a gallery or a show or
Right.
something, or I thought as much as I thought my work should have been, and so then all that interferes with the actual pure expression of the beauty.
Yes, exactly so. So the process then we're talking about where the self-image is basically not given attention
Mm-hmm.
is you no longer are doing art.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing art. Life is doing art.
Uh-huh.
Beauty is doing art.
There you go.
You're not doing it. Your image of yourself is that you're an artist. But the impulse or desire comes up not from you, but from the source, beauty, whatever, to create an artistic piece. And so that process happens to put the self-image aside, so to speak, or I don't mean to actually put it aside, but to be in this different state, that as you're doing your art, thoughts and images and feelings will come up as usual, particularly early on, because that's your conditioning. But I'm saying then when that happens, here you are in a state of awareness of the impulse to paint or
Mm-hmm.
do things. When those thoughts and feelings come up, when I talk about not giving them attention, includes not evaluating them.
Mm-hmm.
The
Not
thought
rejecting
about,
yourself.
well, that's just a thought. It's just simply being aware that all of that response that you're now aware of is not, it's just an obstacle or an interference with what's flowing now.
What were you saying a second ago there about, you say you disputing that idea to just say, oh, it's just a thought?
That's a good understanding. I'm not saying not to have that insight. That's like Byron Katie points out that to you, that's just a thought. But I'm saying the actual process that you come to after you understand the significance of thought is that you don't, let me put it like this. If you're doing a painting and then thought comes in about yourself as a painter, and then your reaction to that is, oh, that's just a thought, I don't need to do that. That is thought responding to thought.
Well, it can be if it's a memory, kind of like, oh, but it's also can be a guidepost, it seems like to me.
It
Like,
can,
I
it can.
remember that so-and-so said this, and oh, that's a good piece of insight.
Yes,
Yeah, and then helps you to kind of let go of it.
yes. I understand that. And I'm saying there's a state beyond that where that's not necessary. You now understand the significance of thought. A state where when thought arises and feeling arises, you simply don't pay attention to it. You're aware of it, but you just don't focus attention on it. The attention is on what's happening, the experience, what's
Present
actually
moment.
happening. It's like Krishnamurti talks about, he uses the term choiceless awareness, and that's what he means by it. To be in a state of awareness where there's no choice as to what to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.